Blog Talk Radio.
Race fans, how the hell are you? It's Race Chat Live. That means it's Tuesday night. That means it's 8:30 Eastern Time. And I'm here so I don't get fined. But I got co-host Taz Taylor here with us. You know, I could start this show out in a long, salty, I don't know. I could just be, whatever today. And I think I'm enough of that these days. I guess once a verdict comes out, you just have to accept it for what it is and move on. I had a racetrack owner one time tell me, he said, Chris, when I make the call to not race that night, or I make the call to do something, I'm fine with it, and I accept that, and I move on. And you know what? That's the way we're going to be here tonight. Of course, I'm speaking of the Kyle Larson waiver situation. I have expressed the last 2 weeks my dissatisfaction, the last 10 days, I guess. It's nothing that I can do to change the verdict, right? It's like the O.J. Simpson case. It's just, it's just nothing you can do, right? I mean, we just have to accept it and move on from it. There was a specific rule that was written, and NASCAR can break whatever freaking rule they want to break, and we could spend the entire show wasting our breath over something that's done, I mean, it's been beaten down, right? I mean, everybody's expressed their opinions. Everybody's had their moments of fame, 5 seconds of fame or glory or whatever, as they've added their opinion. Most people, I would say most people, were in favor of Kyle Larson receiving a waiver. And, I mean, that's good. Like, at least NASCAR fans can stand behind something. And most of us that petitioned against the waiver weren't just non-fans of the driver. I'm probably sure most of us were just non-fans of the driver. But some of us were just literally wanting NASCAR to do the right thing and stick to their rule book. But the one thing that we found out about NASCAR over all these years is they are consistently inconsistent. I've been waiting all day to use that opening phrase. Consistently inconsistent. And there's proof in the pudding, Do I need to go down the list, or can we just accept it for what it is and agree that, I knew Kyle Larson was going to get a waiver, and some people want to blame it on, it would be such a backlash to NASCAR if they followed the rule book, right? are, we've seen the shenanigans, in the past, in many different situations. Who can be surprised that NASCAR lets the Golden Child and the Golden Organization get away with something? Sure, he put forth the effort to get there and had everything lined up, but in the end, he decided that the Indy race was more important than the Coca-Cola 600. And though it did rain out and he wasn't able to get into the vehicle, he still made the attempt to be there at the racetrack. I don't think that that's what the rule book says. If you can find me all those little added in rules, to the waiver guidelines, I'd love to see that. I would love to see where his deal was specifically outlined. But look, the idea of the rule has to be none other than the fact to keep drivers from racing other series. And, we're not just talking about the Cup Series. We're also talking about the Xfinity Series, the Truck Series as well. And if you're running for a championship and you're also on the Cars Tour, is NASCAR going to grant you a waiver so that you can continue to lead the points in the Cars Tour while you're, maybe running for 16th in a truck? That's going to happen, right? It's going to happen, and it's going to happen quicker than we can imagine. And somebody's going to test those waters now that, there is no specific sanity in NASCAR's rule. If NASCAR can give a waiver for a driver who's suspended by NASCAR and turn around and give a waiver to a guy who didn't show up for a race, though it says in the rule book you're required to show up for every race, what's next? We're going to have a team just not show up because, they have something else going on. Look, like I said, this could be a runway to hell if we dabbed any further into it. I would like for my co-host to respond. Of course, he has every right to have the floor as I do. I've clearly stated my claim and my case for the last last 10 days at least. And so now you can hear Taz's side of the story. Taz Taylor, welcome aboard. I know we're coming out swinging already this evening. And I know you've been hanging on to what your opinion is, and I think our fans deserve to hear that. So, Taz Taylor, please.
So, I know Chris and I, we have different views on this, and we both have basically come to the terms of we agree to disagree, which that happens on Race Chat Live. It's nothing new.
That's what.
But
yeah, that's our show.
But I believe Larson should have gotten this waiver because you can't control the weather. Like, I get Larson had a choice of skipping the Indy 500 and making sure he was in Charlotte, but it wasn't just his choice. He also had Rick Hendrick sitting there helping him make the decision. He also had Jeff Gordon sitting there making a decision, helping him make the decision. So it was not just a Larson decision. It was a whole team decision. And it wasn't like they didn't think weather would play a factor in any way, shape, or form. They planned for, obviously, him to run the full 1,100 miles. They also had probably had backup plan to backup plan in case of weather or something else drastically happening. So, of course, Indy had the rain delay, so it pushed back the start time, which made Larson miss the start of the 600. They had a backup driver for the owner points in Justin Allgaier to keep the 5 car in the owner points. They made every single attempt once Larson finished the Indy 500, do his 2 minutes of media press and get out of there to catch a plane and golf cart his way over to the track. They made every effort possible, and unfortunately, when he got to Charlotte, weather became a factor, again, out of anybody's control, and NASCAR called the race, even though they probably could have probably finished it. But according to some of the drivers, Denny Hamlin, But now with this in mind, this is where I think NASCAR will look stupid in this sense. NASCAR and IndyCar kept promoting and highlighting Kyle Larson of doing the double for quite some time. And, of course, when it got closer and closer, that's when the stories started talking more and the press started and media started becoming more and big and huge for Kyle Larson doing the double. And I'm sorry, but if I were NASCAR and you sat here and denied a waiver or told Larson you're not going to be championship eligible because you went to go run the double even though it was delayed, but yet you promoted it, it will look stupid on NASCAR. Now, if it was like, say, Larson running, I'm just going to throw this out there as an example, not saying this will happen, but it could be out there. Say if Larson wants to run a special, I think there was like a wingless sprint car little 500 at like Anderson Speedway. Say Larson wanted to run that and run the Coke 600 on the same day, but NASCAR did not promote in any way, shape, or form the little 500 or Larson doing the little 500 plus the Coke 600 double. If Larson decided to run the little 500 instead over the Coke 600, at that point I would say no, he should not get the waiver to be eligible for the championship. But because NASCAR in this case, they put in the promotion, they put in the media, they put in everything else saying that Larson's going to run this, and they kept on highlighting it throughout the whole Charlotte race too. The Indy 500's done. We're keeping track of Larson until he gets here. Like, NASCAR would look stupid if they denied him. It would, and fans would freaking go off the charts. And I get this could open the floodgates, but I see it in this sense. If NASCAR is helping promoting a driver running 2 races in one day and they deny a waiver, that makes NASCAR look stupid. If NASCAR does not promote a driver doing 2 races in one day, then maybe at that point I will side with NASCAR saying denying the waiver is the right call. I think the waiver system is kind of childish at this point, for a lack of a better term. I do believe waivers should always be approved for any medical or illness reasons. I mean, we've seen it happen with Kyle Busch. We've seen it happen with Tony Stewart, Chase Elliott last year. I believe Alex Bowman got one too. But in terms of getting suspended for, regardless if it's 1 race, 2 races, or indefinitely suspended and then coming back the same season, I think NASCAR should deny those claims. And I'm sorry for those who are fans of Chase Elliott last year who got a waiver because he got his second waiver, mind you, for being suspended for a race after dumping Denny Hamlin on the front stretch. If NASCAR suspends you, they suspended you for a reason. You should not get a playoff waiver. That's just my opinion on that.
I agree, Taz Taylor. This feels like the Oprah Winfrey show where they're giving away cars. You get a waiver, you get a waiver, you get a waiver, and you get a waiver. They just sign waivers. What's the point in the rules? Like, explain to me what the freaking point is for the rules, and then we can say, okay, well, that doesn't fall into that category. But I think NASCAR fumbled this one, and they were pushed in a box. They didn't know. It makes me wonder why it took 9 days to decide if they were going to give him a waiver. Like, for 9 days, do they just want to hear the other side of the story? Like, how does that go, right? But Kyle Larson's got his waiver. He's going to race for a freaking championship. To all you little crybabies that think he's the dirt track Jesus and Savior. But in reality, Kyle Larson don't give a shit about you. He don't give a damn about me. He gives a damn about racing and where he, that's the whole thing. He was selfish to himself to not be there for his team. And I think everybody ignores that fact that Mr. Hendrick is the one that gave this kid the shot to drive for a championship team after, being basically blackballed out of the sport. And then for the fans, the same fans that took up for him then are taking up for him now, yet he abandoned you. He abandoned you fans to do what he wanted to do. And the entire time they sold this BS crap that, NASCAR's our top priority. NASCAR's our top priority. That's how Mike Tyson said everybody's got a plan until somebody gets punched in the mouth, right? And that's just the way that it happened here. So, don't think that Kyle Larson is going to be loyal to the sport ever. And please stop crowning him as the Jesus that y'all think he is, because in reality, one good deal down the road, and who knows, man, this kid may go Formula One racing or IndyCar racing, and hey, good for the sport. It's good for the sport. I call BS on all that, but hey, Mr. Hendrick, what Mr. Hendrick wants, Mr. Hendrick gets. He's proved that time and time again. I think he's undefeated. He even got NASCAR to write a waiver for his driver that got suspended by NASCAR. How unprecedented was that? Okay, it's just salt in the wound, and I would like to move on from it. There's so much other things like Joseph Newgarden. He wants to do the double. Let's move one of these races to Monday and the other on Sunday, right? Let's move the Indianapolis 500 back to the Monday at 12 o'clock, 11 o'clock start time. That would be amazing. And then the Coca-Cola 600 could be raced before the Indianapolis 500. And then we'll see another situation with rain delays and whatnot. I mean, it's bound to happen again, correct? But look, he's had his moments of glory, and we'll see him in the championship run. And then all these people that, it was good for NASCAR. They'll be complaining that, it's not fair. He's going to win a championship and didn't race all the races. So, we'll get on that soapbox when time comes.
I think when it comes to this waiver thing, before we close it out, I think if you say if you are injured or have an illness, depending on there should be some sort of timeline of how long, say if you're injured for instance, Chase Elliott broke his leg last year in a snowboarding incident. He was out for, I think 6 or 7 weeks. So he missed 6 or 7 races. Okay,
right.
As long as he made at least 50% of the regular season and has a waiver, I'd be all right with that. Obviously he got injured. He can't be in a car racing injured. It's like saying J.J. Watt going out to play football with a broken arm. It ain't going to happen. But But with Kyle, I'm going to go back on this one. With Kyle Busch, I don't remember how much of the regular season he missed. But I feel like if you're going to miss, if you're injured or sick to the point where you're going to miss 50% of the regular season, you should not get a playoff waiver. There's no question. If you want to file for one, you're going to look like an idiot. You're going to get denied. But in the case of if you get suspended, regardless if it's 1 race, 2 race, or indefinite suspension, you should not get a playoff waiver either, or get approved. Or if you want to file for one, you shouldn't get approved of it either. NASCAR suspended you for a reason. You're going to learn your damn lesson, and that's that. And it mind blows me that Elliott last year, I think Bubba had one too, where he got suspended for a race and he was still eligible for playoffs because NASCAR gave him a waiver. I don't know, I just think it's pretty stupid. Suspension, if you get suspended where NASCAR sits you for a race or two, you should not get a playoff waiver. That is my opinion, because you should learn your lesson, and that serves you. In terms of, now, like I said before, if NASCAR and another series promotes a driver running the double and they miss out on it, I think having a waiver should be there. That's just my opinion. I know, Chris, you're on the other side of it, which, again, that's your opinion. You're entitled to it.
It's not an opinion. It's the fact that we all have rules and we all have laws to abide by, and it's just not freaking right for 35 other drivers that obeyed the law, that obeyed the rules, that thought, hey, we no longer have to worry about this guy because he didn't do what was in the rule book, and that's okay. Like, even if there was a provision that, hey, we'll wipe out all the stats that you had beforehand, you made yourself ineligible, but win again and you're eligible again. I'm okay with that. I don't want to keep a guy out of a championship, but what I want is for NASCAR to stop being consistently inconsistent. And that means that they waiver their rule book for whatever pleases the top brass in NASCAR, or technically probably the fan base, because I'm hearing that NASCAR was giving the waiver out of fear of the backlash to the fans, which is absolutely ridiculous that you would give somebody a chance to cheat. Like, does Dale Jr. really want to admit that his motor was bigger than everybody else's in the 2001 Pepsi 400? I mean, he doesn't want to admit it. It may be the truth. That race may have been staged, but he doesn't want to admit it. Like, I mean, look, it's cheating. It's allowing one person or one team to get away with something that others felt that they had to abide by. I mean, how many of these guys, like Larry Mack said earlier, back in the days of Davey Allison and whatnot, they put those guys in race cars, and they had no business in race cars. The waiver was designed to make sure that we weren't putting a hurt driver in a race car. NASCAR is the one that decided to just start throwing waivers for suspending drivers and for any kind of thing imaginable, like, Chase Elliott. 2 examples, a snowboarding incident, and, a quarterback in the National Football League wasn't going to get paid one year because he had a motorcycle accident, right? Because they frowned upon you doing things that could put your day job in jeopardy. So it's not a Kyle Larson thing. Look, I'm over it. It's what's done is done. There's no way to change it. We all knew that NASCAR they were going to sign the waiver. Like everybody said, why is everybody such in an upheave? We know that NASCAR is going to give him a waiver. There's no doubt. All the media press, there's no doubt he's going to get a waiver. There's no doubt. So everybody put this no freaking doubt into it, and it sounded like a freaking election, with Hillary Clinton back in 2016. There was no doubt that Donald Trump was not going to be president, and I was hoping that we would have a Donald Trump moment with Kyle Larson where NASCAR did the right thing and followed the freaking rule book that they wrote. It's just like this whole cheating thing. We're not going to cheat up the cars. We're not going to do anything. But yet we're clearly seeing an advantage by one organization over all the rest of them. Well, I wonder why. Because they're getting away with things that other people aren't getting away with. Whatever. It gets my blood pressure boiling. And my favorite driver of all time is Dale Earnhardt Jr. I was only, Davey Allison was in my life for 5 years. Dale Jr. was in my life for 18, almost 20 years, right? He's been in my life now for 28 years, right? Dale Jr. was my guy, right? I mean, and everybody knows that. So and he drove for Hendrick Motorsports. Look, it's not that I hate Hendrick. It's not that I hate Kyle Larson. It's just that we can consistently figure out over the last 30 years that Hendrick Motorsports gets what it wants every single time. And you know what, that golden horseshoe? Yeah. Let's talk about that for a minute. But we're not going to bore these wonderful listeners we have tonight with any more of the Kyle Larson saga. But we can talk about Kyle Busch. Right. At RC, talk about Joseph Newgarden wanting to run the double himself. But the elephant in the room outside of this big story that we were just talking about a minute ago is Taz Taylor, the demise, the destruction, and the closing of Stuart Haas Racing. I don't know if that was on anybody's bingo card at the beginning of the season. Taz Taylor, that is
without they were posting on their social media to start the year. It was not on my bingo card that they were closing this year.
Not at all, my friend. But now, look, let's not be that surprised that a major organization, a manufacturer's darling, has now demised. Because, look, over the last 5, 6, 10, 15 years, we've had DEI. All right, that was a 3 to 4 car operation. We've had Ray Evernham Motorsports, right? They brought in Dodge, right? Okay. You've had Michael Waltrip Racing. Like, who would have thought 10 years ago that Michael Waltrip Racing would not have started the third decade of the millennial, right?
The Toyota.
Yeah, right. I mean, they were a main front for Toyota coming in to racing. Another multi-car team. And this one to this day still just shocks my mind that we had Red Bull in our grasp. We had Red Bull and all the money that they have in our sport, and we somehow let them get away. So let's not be that surprised that a four-car team...
I remember the Red Bull days of Brian Vickers, Scott Speed. I think A.J. Allmendinger was part of them at one point.
Right. He was in the beginning. He couldn't qualify a car until out there and worked some kinks out. But, that was a whole lot of money that Red Bull come into the sport with, and they went through a whole lot of money real quick. So there's no doubt that they didn't stick around and continue throwing money down the toilet. Of course, there's been other operations, Richard Petty Motorsports, Ginn, I believe Ginn Motorsports, which had fielded 3 or 4 cars at one time back in the early middle 2000s. Furniture Row Racing. So every year, we have the demise. And as a matter of fact, I read the article the other day that only a third, starting in 2025, only a third of the teams that received their original charters still own those said charters. So quite a shock there for, a lot of people. A lot has changed. A lot of landscape has changed since 2016. So, and we'll continue to see more change. Now, let's get some pointers here with the Stuart Haas Racing closing. First of all, shock, right? That was the shock wave. Like, we heard the rumors. We heard that there may be a relationship problem with Ford. We watched Front Row Motorsports announce that they were now a Tier 1 program, which kind of left us wondering, okay, well, where does that leave Stuart Haas Racing? But, Honda was coming in, right? And so maybe, just maybe, none of that seemed to happen. None of that come to fruition. Taz Taylor, now we're honestly sitting here and watching the last days of Stuart Haas Racing. Tell me how that makes you feel. I know we went through the list of teams that are already gone. Tell me what if at that point in time of the announcement, if it didn't feel like maybe the sport maybe was losing a little bit of ground, like we're not expanding, we're contracting. Tell me your thoughts on that.
Well, I don't think we've seen as big of an organization like Stuart Haas shut down like this in NASCAR. And if we have, well, I mean, I know we've gone through the teams, but I don't think those teams have been anywhere as big as what Stuart Haas was, or is, I should say. Have there been teams probably close to it? Maybe. Maybe not. I don't think it's so much retracting. I think we're kind of, in a way, we're retracting in terms of a big powerhouse team. Because if you think of it, before the next-gen car, Stewart-Haas was like top-tier team. Like, they were competing week in and week out with Gibbs, with Hendrick, with Penske, And now, like, since the next-gen era, it seems like Stewart-Haas, like, fell off the face of the earth.
Right.
I don't know if it was something happening behind the scenes or if it really was this whole driver movement that maybe they didn't act upon it soon enough, kind of like how Hendrick did, if you think about it. Like, Jeff Gordon knew when his time was up, when younger drivers started coming in, insert Chase Elliott. Jeff Gordon knew, he backed out, Chase Elliott came in. Dale Jr., same boat. He backed out. Well, he backed out for injury reasons for the most part, but he knew when his time was up to insert a younger driver, insert Alex Bowman. That left Jimmy Johnson and, Casey Keene. Casey Keene went out.
We ain't got no whipped cream, do we, baby?
Casey Keene went out for injury purposes, so that inserted William Byron. Johnson knew it was his time to go and insert Kyle Larson. So obviously this youth movement was happening, and these veterans are pretty much sitting there saying, like, all right, this is our time to go. But I think over at Stewart-Haas, they either didn't have the drivers to gel very well. Haha, that rhymed. Or they just didn't follow the youth movement fast enough as they should have. Because now that they have all the veterans out, all of a sudden Stewart-Haas is like, we're starting to see Stewart-Haas cars start to compete again. It took them a few weeks, but we're starting to see them compete again. I mean, we're seeing Josh Berry getting top tens. We're seeing Chase Briscoe not only won a race in the first year of the next gen, but he also is starting to come back and compete. Noah Gragson turning the whole 10 team around, we haven't seen in quite some time. And nothing against Ryan Preece. Or nothing against Ryan Preece. I don't think he's had the performances as the other three has had, but at least he's, trying to put his nose into the competitive spirits.
Right.
So we always thought Stewart-Haas would downsize, but we didn't think of a shutdown.
Yeah. There's a lot of money in Gene Haas's hands, a lot of money. And for him to completely pull the plug on Stewart-Haas Racing really just shows the bitter blood, obviously, between Tony Stewart and Gene Haas. And this is more of a divorce, I believe, than just a shutdown. And I think that maybe Gene probably felt like Tony just kind of left him hanging there. And maybe Tony did. Tony felt like he was biting the bullet for the lack of performance in the organization. But Gene, obviously, from my understanding, said that he controls the four charters. So, in a way, Tony was the bankster. Tony was I'm going to bring the sponsorship to this organization and build it where Gene Haas didn't have those kind of connections. We remember Best Buy being on the side of that 66 car, but I guarantee you that wasn't top-notch money being invested into a program. But Tony Stewart has a lot of hands. He has a lot of irons in the pot. Is that what it's called? Irons in the fire, something to that. Anyway, he's got a lot of responsibility on his plate, and obviously something went strange with the NASCAR deal, and he decided that he wanted out. And that forced Gene Haas to say, well, if you're getting out, then I'm wanting out too. And what it's done is it's sent shockwave through the sport. There's Josh Berry and Rodney Childers. That team wants to go as a full team. They don't want to be separated. They want to go as a full team somewhere. There's been rumors that Cole Custer will continue with the Haas Automation sponsorship. So there's a possibility that Cole Custer, out of all this, might get a ride in the Cup Series again. With who, we're not sure yet. It has been rumored that Riley Hurst is taking his money and his sponsorship to 2311 Racing, and basically this is unprecedented. They are taking basically buying a charter. The owners of whatever sponsorship, I guess, Monster Energy, something in that effect, they have basically told 2311 Racing that they're going to buy the charter for Riley Hurst to have a Cup Series ride. That's unprecedented. I'm not sure the full details into that, but these are just rumors that I'm hearing. I've heard that Chase Briscoe is going to the 19 car.
What?
I have heard, yeah, or Eric Jones possibly. So Chase Briscoe's also been rumored to be headed to the Wood Brothers Racing.
That sounds more
with Harrison Burton being let go at the end of the season.
See, with this whole thing with Stuart Haas, obviously with the shutdown happening, then not much longer later that happened, Front Row announced they're going to go to a three chartered team next year. Obviously, McDowell's out with the 34, so we don't know who's in the 34. They're going to have Todd Gilliland for the 38, and I'm guessing the 36 will go from a part-time open ride to now a full-time chartered ride, which I'm guessing, which they haven't confirmed it yet, but my guess is that with Stuart Haas going away, that opens up 4 charters, which means Front Row literally bought a Stuart Haas charter, but nobody wants to confirm that or anything, but that pretty much says what it says there. So really, you're down to 3 charters. Obviously, there's been rumored speculation that Trackhouse could get one of those. As Chris mentioned, 2311 was also in discussions of getting a 3rd charter. And of course, some people say RFK is going to get this other charter. No. If you people were watching the All-Star broadcast, which I know the All-Star race is not one to really watch. I mean, for the most part, when we watch major sporting events or whatever, the All-Stars or the Pro Bowl, whatever you want to call it, for whatever sport you have, not a whole lot of people watch it except for the diehards, you know. But if y'all remember, Brad Keselowski interviewed before the All-Star race. He said that he shut down rumors and the talk saying that RFK is not looking to expand right now. So RFK is not going to get this 3rd charter. If they do, I will be mind blown. I will be shocked. I'll be more shocked than Stuart Haas shutting down.
Right.
Obviously, there's been people saying Junior Motorsports is going to grab this charter and finally move into the Cup Series. And a lot of reporters are saying there's been no discussions of Junior going down the Cup route. There's no discussions of Junior trying to grab a charter. So maybe he's really not. But do I think this is his golden opportunity? Absolutely. I think this is handed on a freaking silver platter for him.
Right. Well, there's other drivers that, of course, are kind of being forgotten about here. Michael McDowell, with his exit, he's going to the 71 machine over at Spire Motorsports, which leaves Zane Smith in question of where he's going to go. Trackhouse needs 4 total charters. They only have 2. Suarez is supposedly getting a contract extension, so that leaves 3 charters, 4 drivers. Shane Van Gisbergen, who's coming off a win this past weekend at Portland.
One of two things is going to happen here with this Trackhouse deal you mentioned. Zane Smith. This is either going to lead to Zane Smith still under contract. Obviously, I think Zane Smith signed a multi-year contract with Trackhouse. So I think one of 2 things is going to happen. And this obviously leads to Trackhouse getting a 3rd charter to expand their Cup team. They are going to take this 3rd car and either move Zane Smith into this car and keep SVG down in the Xfinity program just to develop his skills. And right now, from what they're saying, they want to learn more about SVG in terms of his oval and super speedway racing because they already know his road course abilities. They're not going to learn much from him on that versus what he's capable of on the ovals and the super speedways that's primarily based on NASCAR. So my guess is that, or they will turn the page, or they will turn the switch, flip the switch, whatever you want to call it, and put maybe Zane Smith down to Xfinity, taking SVG's ride and moving SVG up to the Cup Series. Or unless they work out a deal with Paulig and he put one of the 2 drivers, probably Zane Smith, on loan to Paulig like Zane Smith was with Spire this year and put Zane Smith in the, I think it's a 16 car that has the rotation of drivers. Yeah, it's a 16 car.
Yeah, that seems to be kind of an open ride there.
I don't see Kaulig trying to sign a 2nd driver full-time to Cup. I could be wrong.
Well, it's clearly Kaulig has taken 2 steps back, how they're even hanging on as an organization. Chris Rice come out and said, look, we're not going anywhere. All those rumors are fake. Of course, we were caught up thinking Kaulig racing was going to shut down and those charters were going to be made available. But obviously, maybe there's still life in the fire considering that the demise of Stewart-Haas Racing still leaves a lot of open questions, but at the same time, it gives more of a competitive advantage to those teams that are sticking it out because we're going to be battling with wherever these 4 drivers go, wherever these 4 charters land, those are all going to be new teams. And so, that's an advantage that Kaulig Racing could have over those is, just bringing back the same crew and working on getting better each week. Where SVG may land and if he's, Cup ready, I'm not sure if that's possible. I know Zane Smith has not had the greatest performance yet as well. So whether or not these guys get to go on to their next destinations in a good ride or whether or not they have to step back is yet to be known. We'll have to keep our eye on that as well. Austin Cindric, man. I mean, how about Austin Cindric coming up this weekend on a stunning win? A guy that we would probably on a very short lease at Penske Racing. Took advantage of Ryan Blaney running out of gas. Is that not the perfect career saver, for a win? I mean, let's give Austin Cindric his due glory.
Austin Cindric's 2nd win comes at the expense of, once again, Ryan Blaney, because Austin Cindric's first Cup Series win was at the expense of Ryan Blaney. Poor Blaney. He knows that Cindric's 2 wins has come at his expense. He's got to know that this. Blaney could have won Blaney could have won a Daytona 500, but nope. He had to pay the price for it, and see his teammate Austin Cindric cross the line. Ryan Blaney had Gateway 1, runs out of gas, and sees his teammate cross the line, dig the win away. Like, Blaney's got to be sitting here like, oh, my Lord. If I choke another race, somebody else cross the finish line because I don't want to be a third time.
Right. Yeah. Definitely, one man's loss is another man's treasure. So,
but Gateway has been known to be a lot. I know people see Gateway as like a typical mile-ish speedway race, but it's kind of a flat. It's got the shape of Darlington, but it's more of kind of has the banking that sort of resembles. I know New Hampshire is probably the bad example, but it's pretty low banking. Let's put it that way. And we know when it comes to these lower banked tracks, it's become more of I guess you can say wild card in a sense, because, or unless you have this act for flat tracks like Blaney or Christopher Bell. Those were the two guys basically up front that should have finished 1-2, and both of them could have easily won the race. It was just a matter of who had the better car at the right time when it was all said and done. But nope, flat track once again throws in a wild card, and here we have Austin Cindric. And it's not the first time a flat or a low bank track has done this before. Go back at New Hampshire a couple of years ago. That ended up being shortened. Eric Almirola, nobody put him on the win list card on the win list card that year.
Right. I was going back. I was trying to find. I was trying to find the next topic that we had on board. Of course, Clint Boyer is signed up to race a Spire Sassman truck race coming up. That's going to be in Nashville in a couple weeks here. So Clint Boyer getting back behind the wheel again. Is that a good deal for Clint? I mean, it's been a couple of years already. Greg Biffle, best of the one and done.
I mean, hey, I think Clint Boyer probably has a few races left. Was he really in a competitive ride? Nah, I don't think so. Even with Stewart-Haas, I think Stewart-Haas is probably his better chance of a competitive ride, but I don't think there was anything spectacular of Clint. But I think with him running a one-off with trucks, I think just basically, just kind of lets him have fun. There's no pressure, that sort of deal. So it's good to see him back behind the wheel, and we'll see what he can do just running a truck with basically no pressure. He doesn't have to run for points. He doesn't have to run for any fame or whatever. He can just go out, have fun, and I don't want to say not care, but there's not much he should really, worry about. Got nothing to lose at this point, obviously.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it should be fun for him to get back into, a race mode. I think that truck is good enough to win, so we might see, Clint Boyer in victory lane again. I do know that one thing, the reason why I wanted to bring this subject up was because I think a lot of this has to do with their children. I think that, what we've seen with Brad Keselowski in victory lane at Darlington was, it was touching because he knew that his daughters were going to remember him being in victory lane. And I think that's something, these drivers, they focus a lot on their careers. They don't have children at very young ages. Some of them don't. And Tyler Reddick, he's got like a 4 or 5 year old already, and I think he's like 24 years old. But, a lot of these drivers did not have children until later on in their careers and whatnot. And so their children are being raised without really seeing the competitive side. They know that their parents were connected to racing, similar as Dale Earnhardt. But I think they want to be remembered as a winner. And this will give the perfect opportunity for Bowyer to let Cash get a little bit of bragging rights out there on the playground that his daddy still got it. And, we're waiting. Cash, I guarantee you, will be he's going to be a racer, right? I mean, you can see that between him and that Larson boy. They're being primed, and Brixton Bush as well. Those guys, we're going to see them one day in competitive series. And I think that it's important for their fathers to remind them where they got that competitive blood from. And it's very important that they see them as winners and not just as, remembering them, not just as, something that's in a history book. And also, Taz Taylor, our drivers retire at a very, very early age these days. If you go back just 15, 20 years ago, Dale Jarrett was racing into his 50s, late 49s. Of course, Dale Earnhardt died at 49, and there was no sign yet that he was going to retire.
Let me tell you,
Mark Martin.
As somebody who, I was born in the late 90s, but I always tell people this, and Chris, I'm sure you remember this. Dale Jarrett was the first NASCAR driver I knew and the first driver I became like a fan of. And when he, obviously, when he got with UPS and then went with Michael Waltrip Racing, and when he kept racing, it was kind of oh geez, it was you want to be as a fan. It was hard to watch, but to see him kind of go from a front runner competitor to all of a sudden he's a mid-pack driver, and it's I want to be a fan of his, but you're also sitting on the sidelines he's just hitting his age, he's hitting the time to go, and it's just a matter of when at this point, whereas our other drivers are going Johnson, Harvick, Newman, for example. I guess they could say Bobby Labonte. Those guys still race out there. Do they race in the major series? No, but if they do, it's only a handful of races at the very most.
Right.
And the thing is that we sit here and say when they run in these lower races, say a Cars Late Model Tour or a Whelen Modified Tour race, or say IMSA or something, if they perform well, we sit here and say they still got it. They could still run. But if you sit here and think about it, do they really got it though? Because if they're struggling in the Cup Series, but if they're struggling in the Cup Series, but they're going to these other series and competing, not to take spotlight away from the lower name guys and such, but if they're sitting there competing, it pretty much sits there and says, well, they got it, but not at the top level of where it is now.
Yeah.
They're competing at the highest level that they possibly can.
Let me describe the end of Terry Labonte and Bill Elliott's career in a sound description. Okay, this is at Talladega from 2012 to say 2020 when Bill Elliott and Terry Labonte finally decided to quit showing up at the racetrack. All right, are you ready for the sound description of it?
Oh boy.
That's the sound description of Bill Elliott and Terry Labonte at the end of their careers when they were still showing up to the racetrack uncompetitive. Okay, and that's sad because he's awesome, Bill from Dawsonville, and he couldn't keep up with the pack. Terry Labonte, same thing. The guy's a two-time Cup champion, the Iceman, right? He had one time he was, I believe, whatever Lou Gehrig, Iron Man, right? With most consecutive starts. So, unfortunately, that's the way a lot of drivers end their careers. Clint Boyer, he wasn't that competitive. I think he won a race or two before the end of his career. Of course, you had Dale Jr.'s career that was taken away from him because of head injuries. So that happens. Kurt Busch, kind of similar. But, these days, it's not so much for Cup drivers to hang around and not be competitive anymore. And I think that the cycle of it is they've got a lot of young talent that pays for rides these days, and they don't have to pay somebody to race a race car. I'm sure Bill Elliott was still pulling a little bit of money out of Wood Brothers' pocket piggy bank just in the short stint that he, I'd say short stint. I think he raced for Wood Brothers for like 5 years on a part-time basis, but I'm sure it cost the Wood Brothers.
I know these days money talks, but at the same time, like when these drivers, kind of retire, but they still want to race, they know, as I mentioned earlier, they know where their standards are for competition-wise. Like we saw, say, in the SRX, we knew Ryan Newman still had it, but does Ryan Newman really still got it in the Cup Series level that it is today? Or does he still have it for, like, the Xfinity Series? Or does he still have it for the Truck Series? Like, Ryan Newman's going to try and compete at the best level that he knows suits him best for the age he is at. Kevin Harvick, same deal with the Cars Late Model Tour. He knows he's going to run. He knows he's not competitive week in, week out at the Cup Series level, but he knows he can probably be competitive in the Cars Late Model Tour. That's just how racers are. They know when to hang it up, like for real hang it up, kind of like how you mentioned, Dale Jarrett, Bill Elliott, Terry Labonte. Like, they just kept going and going and going until their bodies pretty much just couldn't do it anymore, essentially. They're not like our veteran drivers of today, like Jimmy Johnson, Dale Jr., who just not only race for fun at this point, but also kind of like know where they're competitive, pretty much. Like Junior, we see him make handful of starts in Xfinity, and when he makes those starts, he's competitive. If he does it in Cup, I don't think he's going to be as competitive as he would be in Xfinity. It's just where the competition level is for where you race at this point.
Right. Right, and, like I said, there's a lot of young talent out there that's willing to jump in these rides for next to nothing, so it kind of makes it a lot harder for you to outstay your welcome. Though J.J. Yaley still somehow every year starts at least 15 to 20 Cup races, and that guy never was. And it's very – but the one thing you're going to get out of J.J. Yaley is you're going to get a guy who's going to take care of equipment because he knows he won't get the invite back if he doesn't. So – that has worked well for Rick Ware Racing over the last several years. I think you had a couple of drivers that you wanted to spotlight this week, Taz Taylor. You would think with all the news that was going on, we would, have plenty of time. But really, it's not that a lot of news is going on. It's just a couple of headlines really dominated the news source over the last couple of weeks, and we kind of had a so-so race at St. Louis. I think it was a great race. You described the track earlier. I feel like this is one of the, the golden tracks of our age right now. Like, I never expected. We raced Gateway a lot of times, in the Xfinity Series and the Truck Series, and, they had power issues and stuff like that. But now we've gone Cup racing there, and the last 2 years we've seen some excellent racing out of that facility. It just shows that you put the hot sun on an old racetrack, and boy, you're gonna get some slick tires, and you're gonna get some action throughout the whole speedway. So a lot of the problems is racing these tracks with the older surfaces at nighttime when there's no true heat in the track surface, and that's what makes a slick racetrack. Is that heat bearing down onto an old asphalt racetrack. So we saw some great racing this weekend. Of course, we're going to Sonoma, but there was a couple of drivers that really stood out for you this week, and I was going to give you a chance to get those names recognized.
Yeah, they're top 10 this week. Obviously, Austin Cindric winning the race. Denny Hamlin continues his strong season he's having. And the runner-up, Brad Keselowski, continues on the uphill swing for not only him as a driver, but also for RFK as a whole. He gets third, Tyler Reddick fourth, Joey Logano, another Penske car, top 5 finish for him, and what has probably, I'm probably using the wrong word for this one, but abysmal season, at least from what most fans expect out of him. Shockingly, Rhinestone Cowboy with the 6th place finish, Austin Dillon. Christopher Bell, who was race-winning contention from start to finish, I think he was having some sort of engine problems, if you can correct me there, Chris. I think that was what was happening with him, so he backed off to kind of save on the car instead of hurting it.
Right.
Carson Hocevar, again, I think him and Michael McDowell are going to turn Spire Motorsports around.
He's going to get Corey LaJoie fired. Carson's going to get Corey LaJoie fired.
I wouldn't be surprised if LaJoie gets let go in the next year or two. But like I said, I mentioned this in the chat thread over the weekend. Hocevar, with the addition of McDowell next year, I think those two will turn Spire around. Not to the point where they're going to be competitive for wins on a weekly basis, but they're going to put Spire on the map somewhere. Justin Haley, another top 10 for Rick Ware Racing with the 51. And we all thought Justin Haley made a bad move by going from colleague to Rick Ware. Maybe he was really telling us something that we were all kind of like, yeah, okay. And then rounding out the top 10, he was involved with a caution with Kyle Larson, and that's quite the recovery for him because when he spun out with Kyle Busch, I kind of thought his race was done. He would be like a lap or two down. No, he stayed on the lead lap, and he went from 20 somewhere in the mid-20s on the restart to working his way back into the top 10.
Good job. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of comers and goers right now. I know, Carson Hocevar is one of those. Noah Gragson, has been on a complete tear here of late. Eric Jones seems to be moving back in the right direction again. Some guys that are probably fallen, John Hunter Nemechek, of course, whoever's in the 16 car, outside of A.J. Allmendinger at road course races. I haven't heard much about Daniel Hemrick. Maybe I'm just missing him. Harrison Burton, definitely on the way out, right? Headed towards the back. And Ryan Priest is it just won't stop bleeding, It just seems to be getting worse and worse for that guy. But we're headed to Sonoma, Taz Taylor. Of course, there's some road course ringers that are going to show up this weekend. I believe A.J. Allmendinger is in the 16 car. We have a guy by the name of Cam Waters that's going to be in a third RFK entry.
No, RCR. Oh,
RCR?
No. I think RCR has a third car in this race, too.
Yeah, that's going to be Will Brown.
Yeah,
Will
he's
Brown
from the V8 Supercars in Australia.
Yeah.
You have,
So,
hold on,
Cam
let's see here. You have AJ Allmendinger in the 16, as you mentioned. You'll have Will Brown, who I just mentioned, in the 33. Cam Waters, you mentioned, with the 60.
AJ.
Yeah, we got AJ. I don't think there's any other names that stick out. Kez Grau is in the 15. Trackhouse ain't putting out their Project 91 car. I'm starting to think that they got rid of that deal.
Yeah, I think it was just a ploy to get SVG, and once they, once SVG got there, they were like, okay, well, we don't need to fill up this room any more than already is.
We're gonna sell our car. We're gonna sell our car to make room in our budget cap to hire drivers that we have no room to put them.
Right. Yeah. Add another driver. We'll just send another driver over to colleague racing.
You say you can't send him to Spire anymore. Spire's got no room for you.
Right. Oh, yeah, one of the things that we did miss was that supposedly the new agreement coming out with NASCAR will knock charters down to only 3 charters per team, but they are willing to grandfather clause in Joe Gibbs and Hendrick, being that they're already a 4-car team. Now, Taz Taylor, tell me, at what point in time does that grandfather clause expire? Or do you think that it should expire? Should it be forever that they just have 4 charters, or should it be expired at the end of the first contract that expires? Or what do you think? What do you think about this whole NASCAR limiting to 3 charters per team?
I think it could bring more competitiveness to the smaller teams, in a way. I'm just trying to...
Do you think they listen to our show? Do you think that NASCAR listens to our show? Because, we have been the number one proponent of saying smaller teams are better. It's just kind of strange.
It's not wrong when you look at power rankings that we do, once every 2 to 3 months, and all of a sudden we're seeing oh, hey, look, RFK, a 2-car team, they're a top 3 team, and you're sitting here what? Where's Penske? Where's Gibbs? Where's Hendrick? Well, obviously Gibbs and Hendrick still in the top 3, but at one point, I think I remember you saying when I put SHR, which is a 4-car team, down at number 8 or 9, you're sitting here what? But when you sit back and look at it, it's wow. But when you open up your eyes and you look at performances and the standings, you sit here and say, well, really, SHR is an 8th or 9th best team in the Cup Series out of 15 or 16 teams. It kind of makes sense because we're seeing the rise of RFK now after their first year. We're seeing how 2311 is progressing slowly, but they're progressing in there. Front Row, now that they're a Tier 1 team, they're starting to compete up there. Are we seeing the eyeball trend of, 2-car teams, 3-car teams, starting to kind of be competitive now than they were not, before the next-gen car? I think in terms of limiting to 3 cars, I'm not sure where the clock expires, where, say, Gibbs and Hendrick will be given the notice that they have to go down to 3 cars. My guess would probably be maybe in 5 years when Hendrick and Gibbs are basically too old to really run their team, and they hand off the team to Jeff Gordon and, well, I thought it would be Kyle Busch taking over Gibbs, but I don't think so at this point. And maybe Denny Hamlin, but I don't know if Denny Hamlin really wants to take the reins of Gibbs and his own team. I don't know at that point, but that's my guess, probably in the 5, at the very most 10 years. And I'm probably stretching 10 years by a lot.
Yeah.
I just see it as NASCAR limiting to 3 teams, well, 3 cars per team. I think that puts a more stabilized equilibrium for everybody. I think if you have the money and the case to say you should be a 4-car team, then I could see NASCAR saying, all right, we'll give you a 4th charter, but you are not going anything more than that. But, again, I would say probably the next 5 to 10 years is probably when we'll see Gibbs and Hendrick get the eviction notice of close your 4th team. You got to go down to 3 and match with everybody else.
Right. Well, I think that they should, if they're going to expire some charters, then it should be at the end of the first driver. So like Alex Bowman or whoever, whatnot, that should be when that charter expires, and then the charter would go back into the system and maybe either be up for grabs through a lottery system and or, a purchase system if there's a legitimate buyer there. My idea right now is, why are people buying charters when there's still not an agreement going on? So that's probably a big question mark, even. But now I've heard that the agreement is almost done. It just hasn't quite manifested itself yet. So
yeah, I think this could be a more level playing field for some of these smaller teams to try to keep up with these bigger teams. They'll limit 3. Obviously, Penske's already at 3, so it's not like they're really worried about anything. Trying to think of other 3-car teams that's really not in consideration. I don't think there is. That's right now, anyway. Front row, they're gonna be going 2-3, so they're really not gonna be worried about anything, at least for next year. We've talked about Trackhouse probably going to 3. We've talked about 2311 probably going to 3, so those guys probably won't have to worry about anything. Spire's got 3, so they're okay. So it's just a matter of, as you mentioned, Chris, where does the timetable lapse of Hendrick and Gibbs giving the 4th team eviction notice saying you need to downsize?
All right, well, let's get into the Taz's Hot Fix segment. Of course, as we've stated before, we're going to Sonoma. So don't be a fool like I was last week and submitted my Sonoma pick for Worldwide Technology St. Louis race. Of course, I ate the bullet real quick on that one, too, because Martin Truex didn't take much time to get into some happenstance and ruined his race. So maybe a little bit better luck this week. I'm not sure if I'm going to go with Martin Truex again, but start us off here, bud. Let's get us rolling.
All right, so for the favorites to start, I have Martin Truex Jr., Tyler Reddick, and I know there's going to be some head turners on this one, but I have a very argumentative case on it, and that's William Byron as a favorite. For contenders, I have Kyle Busch, Joey Logano, and Chris Buescher. I put an RFK guy on this list to start, and it's not Brad Keselowski. Underdogs, I threw in Austin Cindric, Alex Bowman, and Noah Gregson. Of course, we can look at stats, we can look at odds to kind of persuade us of who else fills up this list. I know there's some big names in there that can easily go in favorites and contenders right off the bat.
Yeah, I mean, you can't deny Hendrick Motorsports. Any of those drivers that are not on the list probably should be looked at as front runners outside of William Byron. Bowman, good to see him on the list. Of course, Larson, you can add him in as a favorite to any of these racetracks at any point in time, along with Byron. There's kind of a big three going on right now in the Cup Series. And Denny Hamlin, not seeing his name on the list.
That's where the question mark is, because I don't think Denny Hamlin's much of a road course racer, in all honesty. And looking at Hamlin's stats for Sonoma, it's not very great, let's put it that way. It's 17 Sonoma races. He has yet to even win there. He only has 4 top 5s and 7 top 10s, and his average finish is 19.0. So it seems like either Sonoma's not a good one or he's just not a road course racer in general. And if you look at the NASCAR app betting odds, he's at a plus 2,200 the last I looked. So he's not up there in terms of favorites either.
Yeah, I mean, Ty Gibbs is one of the ones that I think stands out, that I'm not seeing on the list here that I believe is, knocking for sure on the door for a race win. Taz, I'm not going to lie to you, man. I'm still looking through some of this charter crap. And, this is the second time Front Row Motorsports has had 3 charters. It becomes kind of asinine to see these guys sell charters and buy them back. I'm gonna have this all figured out here in the next couple of days. But let's go ahead and carry on with the segment that we're supposed to be in. I'm gonna have to go back.
Right. So I have 3 names that should be on this list. But only one of them can go as a favorite. So here are your 3 names. Ty Gibbs, as you had mentioned, Chris. Christopher Bell. Mm-hmm. And Michael McDowell.
Yes. Michael McDowell
Those 3 should be on here. Only one of them can go as a favorite.
Michael McDowell probably going to get a win this year. Yeah, and unfortunately, that he chose an organization that has yet to really prove themselves over an organization that's moving up in the ranks so quickly. It's Front Row Motorsports. But I would not feel guilty at all to see McDowell at least on the contenders list there, Taz Taylor.
Yep, I'm agreeing with that one. And I think for a favorite, if I had to do a toss-up between Bell and Gibbs, and I'm not saying, and I think Christopher Bell is a better favorite than Ty Gibbs. And I'm not saying that in the sense Ty Gibbs has, no talent or anything, because obviously we have seen a very big, bright spotlight on Ty Gibbs. If you go back into 2021, where he filled in for Kurt Busch the rest of the year, he was god terrible. But then again, he was rushed into a ride, kind of like a last-minute call-up, say, hey, we need you in a ride so we can get owner's points, And which that led into him obviously racing with the Cup Series last year, which we didn't see much out of him. We probably saw like a couple glimpses of top 10 runs here and there. And then this year it's like, whoa, where did this guy come from? Like, we went from like barely competing to top 10 to all of a sudden we're easily putting you in top 10 discussions.
Right.
So if I had, and we've seen how Christopher Bell is on road courses. Obviously, he's won at the Daytona road course, and I believe his rookie season, nonetheless, or what it was either his rookie season or his first year with Gibbs. I don't remember which one exactly it was. I know his rookie season was with Levine's family.
Ty Gibbs right now is favored third favorite right now second favorite right now. And Martin Truex Jr. leads it with a plus 55, 550, and Ty Gibbs with a plus 750. So Vegas is definitely in favor of Gibbs, and Bell is there as well. So.
Yeah, I'm seeing Truex with the 550. I'm seeing Gibbs and Bell with 750.
Okay, showing 775 on my end for that. Kyle Larson with a plus 700. One of the notables that, of course, A.J. Allmendinger, a plus 1,400. Daniel Suarez, a plus 2,500. He's the defending winner here.
No,
but
Truex
Cam
is the
Waters on this list.
Truex is the
defending winner?
Yep, Truex is the defending winner. Suarez won it the year before.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah, that's right, 2022.
I thought Suarez was last year, but it was not. Suarez won it 2 years ago.
All right. Well, kind of iffy. I guess if you added Christopher Bell to the favorites, that would be there. I'm surprised to not see SVG. Like, I think if it's a road course race, we should have SVG there. I think Trackhouse is kind of dropping the ball on that.
SVG is not in the Cup race this weekend.
No, but Kaz Grawley is. Let's see.
Underdog-wise for this, because that's all we really have left to fill. Gosh. Actually, you know what, Chris? There is one driver out of the organization, outside of Joe Gibbs' organization. He's in a big team name, but has not won at Sonoma, but very easily could. Who's always done well in road courses. And statistically wise, he's only finished outside of the top 10 at Sonoma twice, and has the best average finish amongst active Cup drivers, and that's Chase Elliott.
I knew you were going with the face.
I'm willing to take his name and replacing it. No, I want to put his name in there and replace it with somebody else.
Oh, wow.
I will go to that extreme.
Wow. Well, then put Michael McDowell as an underdog and move Chase Elliott into the contenders list.
Ooh, okay. Which leaves one
Michael
underdog.
McDowell's a plus 1,600, But he is behind A.J. Allmendinger, so in a way he would be a crapshoot to possibly get the win.
Another underdog to throw in there. You know what? I want to give a road course ringer an underdog in here. I kind of want to throw the RCR guy, Will Brown. I don't know why. Probably see if he can do what not exactly do what SVG did at Chicago, but become close. I mean, I think Will Brown did come from V8 Supercars. It was either him or RFK's guy.
Yeah. I mean, Cam Waters has probably got a little bit more of a notoriety and a little bit more name than the other guy, but one of those guys that'd be fitting to put in there based off of what we've seen with past success of drivers. Todd Gillian also, I mean, I don't want to be all up on Ford's choo-choo train right now, but Todd Gillian, he's shown a lot of promise at road course races.
You know what? Based off of what I have seen, I'm going to throw Cam Waters in there. I have more faith in him with RFK than I do with Will Brown and RCR. Why not?
I'm all for Cam Waters being added to the list.
All right, well, guess what? Our list is full.
All right.
And, of course, we threw some names in there. Like we said, Suarez, that's not on there. Don't be surprised if Ross Chastain is also competitive, too. He's done well at road courses before, most notably Circuit of the Americas. Justin Haley, don't sleep on him either. Carson Hocevar, as we have mentioned, he could be a big sleeper too. Thinking of a few others that wouldn't be surprised if they get their tip of the hat in there. I don't think there's very much really left to say, but
I'm not going to lie to you. I'm probably going to take this weekend off. I'm not really going to pay much attention to the racing. I'll have it recorded on DVR, but Sonoma's always kind of my off week. Go find something else to do. Tell me the last time Sonoma gave you an entertaining race before we hang up.
I wish I could sit here and tell you I'm looking that up, but I'm not.
Probably when maybe Davey Allison, huh? Ricky Rudd. I remember Wally Dallenbach. 2014. What happened in 2014, son? Stewart, I do believe he did win. I believe that was Tony Stewart's
2014
one of his
Sonoma.
last wins.
Okay, yep, I remember that.
Yeah, came at Sonoma.
I don't think it was like entertaining, but it was better than a sleeper.
Yeah. What are you doing with that?
Anyways, we have our list full. Our hot picks are ready. We've talked about an awful lot, including the hot discussion of waivers. Of course, Larson being the name circling around. We've talked about charters or the SHR, who's going where possibly, where are the charters going possibly.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground tonight. Of course, we filled up our time, just as we always do. Yeah, you never think, how are we going to talk for an hour and a half? But somehow we get it done. We sure miss our third co-host, Miss Lee Reed. I was really hoping to have her back by mid-season. We're still kind of waiting to see if she can get settled in and maybe gets the confidence to get back on the air with us and do a little bit of chit-chatting. But We just want to give a shout out to her and Craig Moore, of course. You got to see Craig this past weekend, didn't you, Taz?
No. Well, we had last Tuesday. We had our video conference call in terms of DJ photography wedding business deal.
Oh,
so,
it was a conference call. Oh, okay.
Oh,
I
yeah.
thought he was there to see you guys. Oh, okay. All right. Well, not bad. All right. Well, that'll do it for the show here tonight. Taz, send us to the house, buddy.
All right. We want to thank everyone for listening along to Race Chat Live tonight here on Blog Talk Radio. If you ever miss a live show, we are always on any form of podcast, such as Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, you name it. We're more than likely on it. Just search the 110 Nation. You'll find our show that airs on Tuesday nights. You'll also find Jared's Thursday night shows, Safety to Success. You also see the 110 Nation Sports Show, hosted by Mr. CJ Sports and Mario from Carolina Sports Plus, that airs on Wednesday nights. And, of course, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, as that's slowly becoming active once again. You can catch our full shows. You can catch small little pieces of any of the shows we air, as well, to kind of get a taste of what our shows are like. And, of course, follow our Facebook pages, like the 110 Nation Sports, like Race Chat Live, to stay up to date with shows, news, opinions, etc. And with that being said, we'll see you the same bat time, same bat place next Tuesday night here on Blog Talk Radio. This has been the Caution Flag of Racing Radio. Chris Crane on the Tasmanian Devil Flaggers. Taz Taylor saying goodnight. We'll see y'all next week. Get those picks in. The points are heating up, baby.
Good night, everybody.